So thank you all for joining today's event. My name is Deepika Jagannath, I'm marketing lead for EDAC, and we'll be hosting today's event, introducing the Employers' Domestic Abuse Covenant. For those of you new to EDAC, EDAC is a pledge by businesses to support women affected by abuse to enter or re-enter the workplace. Employers are invited to sign up to the covenant and identify opportunities within their businesses for women seeking sustainable employment opportunities. EDAC is one of only 3 covenants introduced by the UK government and follows on from the Armed Forces Covenant and the Care Leavers Covenant. It's the first of its kind to focus on domestic abuse and is included as an official recommendation in the Domestic Abuse Act. Today, we are joined by 3 incredible guest speakers who are going to talk about how businesses can tackle domestic abuse, what more needs to be done, and the economic impact this can have on victims and survivors. I'd like to start off with a few statistics. 1 in 3 women aged 16 to 59 will experience domestic abuse in their lifetime. 2 women a week are killed by a current or former partner in England and Wales alone. And the cost of domestic abuse to the UK economy is £66 billion a year. The pandemic has also shone a spotlight on the issue and has led to an increase in incidences. During the first 3 weeks of the first lockdown, there had been 16 domestic abuse killings of women and children in the UK, which was the highest for at least 11 years. And in the first 3 months of the pandemic, 1/5 of offences recorded by the police were domestic abuse related, 5 percentage points higher than the previous year. And with EDAC's focus on economic abuse, the pandemic has disproportionately affected women's financial and employment situations, with a 65% increase in the National Financial Support Line, helping victims of domestic abuse during the first 3 weeks of the lockdown. It is clear that domestic abuse is still prevalent in our society and more needs to be done. Hence why we need everyone from the government, businesses, charities, and individuals to get involved, as domestic abuse is everyone's business. We hope following today's talk, you feel inspired to be part of the change and also to be part of EDAC. As some of you may know, following a 6-month pilot in London and Essex, EDAC is now being rolled out across the whole of England, with special thanks to the Department of Work and Pensions for their continued support. This leads us on to our first speaker. We are incredibly delighted to have Mims Davis, Minister of Employment, opening today's session. He's been an incredible supporter and voice for change. So could I check if the Minister is on? No? I think we're still waiting for her to join. I think she's experiencing a few technical difficulties. Could we check if Claire is on from NG?
Hi, yes, I am.
Hi, Claire.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, are you?
Good, thank you. So for a bit of introduction to Claire, Claire is a social values manager for NG, who's one of our proud signatory partners and has been working tirelessly to affect change. NG is a leading energy and service company focused on moving towards a zero carbon world, and then the first UK organisation to sign up to all 3 government-led covenants. So thank you, Claire, for joining. NG has been a trailblazer, I guess, in showing what employers can do to support survivors. So what are NG doing as signatory partners of EDAC?
Thank you. As you know, we signed up to the covenant in December of 2020. Very early days after lots and lots of discussions with Polly and the team. We're still working on a good few initiatives rather than rolling out, say, 10 or 12, because, you know, if you get 2 right that work, that's perfect. So we've developed bespoke programs, all focusing around pre-employability skills. So to enable those that have lost the confidence, haven't worked in many years due to the current circumstances, getting them employment ready. We're advertising all our roles, probably 20 roles a month on the EDAC website. So anyone that sees a role that NG are advertising, the ring fence for them to apply straight away. We're doing mindfulness courses, one-to-one mentoring for those that request it. And we've launched a social value working group all around EDAC. So that covers all our employees, some 14,000 in the UK. So we have a voice, and then we're rolling out champions in the business.
That sounds incredible, and I guess a showcase to say that we to be a member, you don't just need to provide workplace opportunities, whether that's mindful sessions, any opportunity, anything that you can do can really make a difference.
Yeah.
So why did NG decide to get involved in EDAC in the first place?
Yeah, probably talking well over a year ago, I was asked to get involved through my good friend who's on this call, Tony from the DWP, asked me if it was something of interest to NG. So hence the conversation with Polly. I'll be very honest, I've had no personal experience of domestic abuse, thankfully, nor do I know anyone in my circle of friends or my family. However, it spoke to me because I think a couple of months after our first conversation, I saw a billboard saying domestic abusers do the best work at home. And it really resonated with me because these are an untapped workforce that we need to be working with to get them, these women into our employment. It also gives us a diverse workforce as well. When we did the stats, probably 25% of our workforce are women. And then when you read 1 in 4 women will, suffer or will suffer from domestic abuse, it just seemed a perfect fit for us. And if we can, get these people into employment or even one-to-one mentoring, and even if NG isn't for them, and they move on to another industry, then our work is done. We're going to do this in the community. Part of social value is working in the community. So this fits in there perfectly and aligns with our responsible business charter.
That sounds great. And I know that you're also launching, is it EDAC Champions within your organisation? Yes. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes. So we have a social value working group, which is led out of London. So it's all different business units, because I work for the central region of places and communities. So all different regions, we have members from all different divisions of the business. This isn't an initiative that I brought into the business that I just want to keep in my region. It's going nationally, and NG have signed up to it nationally. So we thought, well, we need more people to spread the word in their divisions. So as part of the social value working group, I'm a lead on EDAC, and then I've created, I would call them EDAC champions across the business to talk about EDAC and to promote the work that we're doing in their divisions. I've got a good colleague on the phone today. Her name's Ria, and Ria is accepted is one of our EDAC champions at first. So I thought it'd be a nice twist if Ria could talk and say why she wanted to become a champion for EDAC.
Yes, definitely.
And here she is.
Hi everybody. Thanks for having me today. So I'm already an advocate for VORG. It's a cause close to my heart for many reasons. So learning that NG had signed up to EDAC made me view my employer slightly differently. I've always enjoyed working here and experienced great job satisfaction in my role as an assistant knowledge manager, but knowing that your company takes social value seriously and then dares to support a cause that's often seen as taboo, that kind of engenders my respect. So when the opportunity presented itself for me to be an EDAC champion, it was a no-brainer. Being able to champion EDAC within NG, I can obviously do so externally. It aligns with who I am, because offering support to empowering and being a voice for women is something that's important to me. And there are a lot of women that I work with in my circle. So just based on the odds that Claire said, to think that roughly 25% of them could be suffering in plain sight, it's quite disturbing. And I guess the prevalence of violence against women and girls means you can't leave it to the specialist organisations to tackle alone. This initiatives like this that allow businesses and corporates to get involved, and while they may not necessarily have the specialist skills to support a survivor's trauma, signing up to EDAC is still mutually beneficial. As Claire said, we have an untapped talent pool to recruit from, but it also facilitates the survivor's journey, particularly in regards to financial independence, exposing them to a broad range of skills, job markets and sectors that without EDAC may not necessarily have been possible. I'm also recently a trustee of an organisation called Hopscotch, which is a charity and social enterprise that seeks to address racial and gender inequity. And my first act as trustee was to introduce them to EDAC via Claire and Polly as well. So that gives them the opportunity to sign up to be, join a network of women's services, and their clients too can benefit from this initiative. So yes, being a champion, it allows me to continue my advocacy in work, use my experience and what I've learned on my own journey to support survivors.
And do you think that, you spoke about the taboo, how do you think workplaces can encourage conversations and to make sure this is not something that people tread on eggshells when discussing, domestic abuse in the workplace?
It's shining light. It's like the role that I'm doing now, being the champion. We're going to be more proactive. We're not necessarily reacting to stuff. So we can put on workshops and highlight the prevalence of the issue. Once you do that, I feel like people become more comfortable to talk if you open the doors to the topic in the first place. Great.
So thank you so much for joining. We encourage everyone to put, their questions in, and to both Ria and Claire, who are great examples of what an employer can do to be, and how to be, a great EDAC member.
And Deepak, if I could just say, I would encourage any organisation to join EDAC. It's very simple to do. You might probably be saying this at the end, but you just go on an expression of interest on the website, and then the benefits it will bring to the business as well as the people that we're serving. We can all be part of this legacy together.
Thank you, Claire.
Okay.
So on to our next speaker. We are incredibly delighted to have Mims Davis, Minister of Employment, talking today about how the UK government is committed to the Employers' Domestic Abuse Covenant. So, hi, Mims.
Hello, everybody, and hello from Leeds. I'm in one of our new job centres as part of our plan for jobs. I'm just in one of the new rooms, and it's a job centre which is focused on on self-employment. Now, when I mentioned the challenge around domestic abuse, my DWP team was so pleased that I was popping out to speak to you, and it's really, really welcome. So thank you very much. The last time I met with you all at EDAC was on International Women's Day, when we promoted the covenant, and we worked with the Sharon Project in terms of establishing this. And I just caught the tail end from some of the employers involved. And it's incredibly positive to hear that it's been such a good experience. And I'm delighted to see that employers are joining and are cleanly wanting to know more. So we've had a successful 6 months pilot in London and Essex, and I now am so pleased to see that we're in a position to roll this out nationally. And as I say, I've seen this firsthand on how we can really help with EDAC, with helping with mentoring circles in particular. So back in March, I was with Accor and the Sharon Project, and listening to people about how these plans and these events were going to be rolled out across England, and what difference it was going to make to people who have survived and need support from domestic abuse. So I'm glad to see, because I'm told that it's incredibly easy for employers to register straight away, and I can only encourage more employers to do that, and those who've had that positive experience to share that as we push into recovery. And there is the link which you can find, which is really easy to find on the website. It just says get involved and sign the covenant. So there's no excuse not to be able to find it. And I can see that Fran's put it into the chat, which is brilliant. And it's so important for our DWP colleagues to look how we can raise the profile of EDAC across our businesses. And it really is important that if you are a victim or survivor of domestic abuse, seeking any help or wanting to progress, that you're absolutely pointed in the right direction. And a job centre is a safe place to disclose, get any benefits, help and support you need. Many of our job centres are co-located with councils and housing, and we've also just set up over 110 youth hubs across the DWP network, working with partners such as the Prince's Trust, working with local councils, working working with Rotherham Football Club, and these are for the under 25s, and they also help with any mental health budgeting or anything else that's going on at home. So it's a very safe place to come here at DWP if you need support, and the way to find your local job centre and get any support is through our new job help website, which will also give you details on local training, help if you're under 25, support for the over 50s, anybody returning or needing any support. So the covenant is a commitment by businesses to support women affected by abuse to enter or re-enter the workplace. Now, employers are invited to sign the covenant and identify as a suitable workplace for those supporting those people with any skills, any opportunities and any chance to really make progression. And it was launched back in 2020 in the UN Day of Human Rights, and this is the third covenant that the government has supported in the UK. This follows on from the Care Leaver and Armed Forces Covenant, and is the first to address domestic abuse, and has been formalised in a recommendation in the new Domestic Abuse Act 2021, which shines a spotlight on the impact of economic abuse and coercive control as well. So all members have pledged to raise awareness of abuse and understand it within the workplace, and this is about encouraging really important, meaningful conversations, enhancing recruitment practices, and really encouraging other organisations and sectors to get involved. And it's really important that we see the strength that we've seen in the Veterans Covenant and the Care Covenant come to pass when it comes to EDAC. And taking this important partnership approach is really important in terms of linking in to statutory services and statutory networks. So we can do everything we can to address the economic impact on women who are disproportionately affected by this when it comes to abuse and surviving from it. And now more than ever, we all got a really important role to play in terms of ending violence against women. And what we've seen because of COVID, because of lockdown, the pressure on our services and the pressure in our communities, this comes even more importantly to the fore, particularly as many people may be returning to work or working differently as a result. So this is a really massive chance to create a positive opportunity, a really long-term and sustainable solution of supporting women affected by abuse. And I can say in my constituency surgeries, nothing changes. It is about the economic impact and about what next and where to go and where things are safe that comes through to me in my constituency services. And this can actually be women and men as well, but predominantly it's women, and predominantly it's the issue around finance, and particularly in my constituency where you may think it's all leafy and lovely, but there are very often pockets of hidden problems, and it's the economic challenge which can be such a difficulty. So we across DWP, as you can see from the chat, are absolutely committed to helping people progress, creating inclusive and sustainable and positive opportunities for people surviving domestic abuse. And thank you everybody who is part of this, who's making the change for people going forward. So I'm happy to hand back, but thank all the employers who are part of it and all the work that you can do to help us promote this covenant, get that knowledge in the way that we have with care leavers and we have with veterans, and appreciate you joining us today, and I hope it's been useful for you. And we're very keen across DWP to work with all employers to make sure that those with the most and widest barriers, I'm sitting behind a hearing loop here in Leeds, so we're supporting people with any barriers that they have in terms of work, whether it comes to confidence and opportunities. So please do work with us and make sure that people down the road from you are getting those opportunities. But I'll hand back now, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister, for your incredible words and for the continued support of the DWP. We would not be here without them. And if employers are thinking about whether to join, I hope this has convinced you, because we do need your support in tackling domestic abuse. So thank you, Minister. On to our final speaker. Employment has the ability, as mentioned, to completely turn around a survivor's life. And we are incredibly delighted to have our final speaker who can speak firsthand on her experiences of domestic abuse and how access to employment changed her life. Shauna Begum is a survivor of 25 years of honour-based abuse, escaping 3 honour killings and 2 forced marriages, one as a child bride. Today, Shauna is a local government officer, domestic abuse trainer, and uses her lived experiences in research and policy development to help change systems and support organisations become more inclusive and diverse for marginalised communities. Shauna is part of various organisations, local, national, and international. So welcome, Shauna. Thank you for joining. Listening to your introduction, you've had some remarkable experiences. Could you tell us a little bit more about your journey as a survivor of domestic abuse, in particular in relation to economic abuse?
Thank you so much, Deepika. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to Polly and Deepika, and I will be sharing my story around economic abuse. So I was subjected to roughly 7 years of economic abuse, and this prevented me from working. I couldn't finish my degree. How I spent my money was monitored. Everything about me was monitored. 2 children came from that horrific abuse. And what people forget is the impact of domestic abuse to the individual. Now, I've accumulated decades of trauma because of the domestic abuse I was subjected to, and I forgot who I was. Who was I? I didn't know. It really knocked my confidence, and I was living on fight or flight mode, constantly managing the abuse and not even living a life. 7 years of my life was, you could say, stolen. And there was a huge gap in my CV. The abuse got so bad that we fled our home in October 2018, and we lived in a refuge, and then we were rehoused in Merseyside. I was not only looking to rebuild my life, but I had the responsibility to having to rebuild 3 of my children's life as well, because we left with nothing at all. And I looked for organizations to help me. How do I present myself with that huge 7 years of being economically inactive? I couldn't go up to an employer and say, hey, I had 7 years of economic abuse. It wasn't very attractive for an organization. And on top of that, the intersectionality barriers that we forget. I mean, not only am I a single mother with 3 children, I'm from a South Asian heritage. On top of that, I'm neurodiverse. How do you even approach an employer with that level of trauma that you carry with you? So my journey began when I looked for organizations, and I didn't find any one of them that would even give me a volunteer opportunities. It was my secondary school that showed such act of kindness. They bought my daughter the uniform, and I felt they created such psychological safety that I disclosed my abuse. I said, this is what we were subjected to. And they were so kind. As a secondary school, they were so kind to me. And then an opportunity came about to become a parent governor, and I took that role, but I still didn't talk about domestic abuse because of the shame, the stigma that shackles you to your past. Eventually, I disclosed to the chair of governors and the deputy chair as well, and a job came about in the local authority. And they said, listen, it's exactly what you do in the community. So instead of me focusing on my past trauma, my post-separation abuse, and it goes further, fleeing the abuse doesn't end there. You know, I was trapped in the family courts. There were so many things that I was managing, as well as volunteering my time just to build my CV and give something back. But they pushed me to go for this role in the local authority. And I thought, I can't, it wasn't even in my radar, this position on the local authority. And they pushed me, they helped me with so many people in the community, helped me with my first part of the application process, which is a written process. Most organization, it's a written process. And because I was neurodiverse, that was something else in the back of my head. And there were so many limiting beliefs, but the community really supported me. And then I got my interview, And it was my manager and my assistant director clearly saw something in me that I couldn't see. I thought, there's so much shame and stigma around domestic abuse. I have a huge gap in my CV. What do I do? And I thought, I'm just going to tell them. I'm just going to tell them. And I exposed everything. And I said, this is my life. And this is what I do in the community now. Because there were no organizations at that time in my area to support me to build myself back into employment, I created one myself on a grassroots level. And I told my manager and a assistant director, I was so authentic with them. They were taking, I think they took, a lot of people would say they took a risk on me. An organization, an employer would see as very risky, but they took a chance on me. And the way I see organizations now is, it's either you create opportunities for people like myself with multiple barriers and you grow. Because with my diversity, with my innovation, even with my gap in my CV, I come with fresh eyes. And since then, I've made a huge impact on my organization. I'm not just the domestic abuse prevention officer for my local authority. I go beyond that. The level of resilience I have, because they gave me this much help, they get even more from me. I'm also a culture champion. So I help look at the organization of the culture in our workforce. I'm also the ethnic community membership officer for our BAME group as well. So again, that's a volunteer position. I'm also the mental health first aider for my local authority. So again, with somebody like me, normally you'd see, bloody hell, that's a lot of baggage. That's a high risk. We don't want to take a risk on an individual, but the amount my organization are getting from me as one person is, I go above and beyond. Even during the COVID lockdown period where my job started, because I'm a self-starter, I know how to crack on with it. I've lived with abuse. I know how to just live my life. It doesn't matter what happens. The lockdown period for even the whole country was very, very difficult. But for me, because I was raised in abuse, it was nothing. For me, it was nothing. I thought, I've been through much worse. So again, the resilience you have with that untapped pool of talent, it only took my organization to give me a tiny bit to get so much more from me. And now it's snowballed. I do so much locally, nationally, and internationally. And as an organization, innovation is so important. You have to stay relevant. So if it means creating a pathway for people, go for it. Because look at me today with my organization and how much they get from me as one person. And that is all, Deepika, unless there is a question you'd like to ask me that I haven't covered in my speech. And just to remind everybody that domestic abuse is everyone's business. For far too long, organizations, we've sat aside and allowed domestic abuse to continue. But once you understand domestic abuse the way I do, I have a dual perspective, not just from a lived experience, but from a service provider as well now. You know, everybody has to do our part. We all have to do our part. It's ethical, it's a corporate social responsibility, and what EDAC provides you is everything you need with no cost to the organization at all. Over to you, Deepika. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak. Any questions?
No worries, and thank you for being so brave and talking about your story, but also using your experiences to make such impactful change. And it's a living experience that providing an opportunity, no matter how big or small, can make a massive difference. And the question I have for you is that many employers, and I think you alluded to it before, that people kind of tread around eggshells as to whether to hire a survivor of domestic abuse and think that all survivors are, you know, delicate flowers. What do you say to that in terms of when employers are thinking about that?
Absolutely. A lot of us, we do see victims, you know, there's a huge stigma, risky, vulnerable. Absolutely, there's a vulnerability there, but as though we're weak, there's some sort of weakness associated to being a victim of domestic abuse. There is no weakness in that. It takes a hell of a lot of strength to navigate through that. my transferable skills, knowing that every day was a life or death situation, navigating through that, you build something, you know, you build a hell of a lot of strength. And all we need is organizations to help identify that and help us transfer our everyday life skills into something more impactful for the organization. So even us treating victims like they're some sort of delicate flower, we are feeding into the shame and stigma around domestic abuse. Domestic abuse happens through the back door. It can happen to anyone. It even happens to men as well. So again, it's putting the spotlight on domestic abuse and collectively doing our part to prevent the shame and stigma around domestic abuse.
And personally, you know, the incredible various, I guess, various positions you have, what has that meant to you personally, I guess, and how has that made you kind of through your journey as a survivor? How has that helped you?
I think the past, since we fled and rebuilt our life, community, your network is so important. And what we're not doing is providing networks for people. But EDAC, the Sharon Project, they do all of that. As an organization, you can do that for the survivor, the person who's been subjected, who's been affected by domestic abuse. And look at me today, you know, 2018 was just around the corner and this is 2021 now. Some people think, well, Shana, you're unique, you're one of a kind. Absolutely not. There's nothing special about me apart from the good people who took a chance on me. Everything in life is risky. And if we don't create these opportunities and invite people in, giving them the position that, listen, I'm an EDAC member as an organization, creating that psychological safety, you will tap into a pool of talent that you've never seen before. Because I haven't met one survivor that isn't willing to give something back. It's a journey. Not every survivor will be at the stage that I am at. But once you get to that stage, it's incredible how much an organization, how much society gets back from us. So again, let's do things on purpose and not like my manager, my AD, who took a chance on me. I have let my organization, my local authority know about EDAC, and hopefully they will sign up to it. But again, this is a call out to other political individuals, councillors, local authorities to sign up to EDAC as well. It was a godsend, and I asked myself, why wasn't EDAC here in 2018, but it's here now. And I can't tell you enough how important it is, because survivors, we don't just sit there, we're constantly looking for how to rebuild our life. And if you can be an organization to support us, that would be absolutely amazing, that everyone else can have that impact, that social value that I bring as one person, not just locally, not just nationally, but internationally as well. You know, it's doing our part and helping that person who really needs that support. Yeah, I hope that makes sense, Deepika.
No, thank you. And everyone's, you know, saying in the chat, thank you for sharing and being so honest, and truly inspiring to hear your story. And the fact that, you know, you haven't let this stop you. And I hope, you know, employers can see, and if anyone's thinking about, you know, becoming a member, please do sign up. And anything, a mentorship, small opportunity can really make a huge difference. So it's a call to action, and Fran has been putting the link to sign up. It's so simple. You could become a member straight away, and we really do look forward to working with you. So, and thank you, Shana. So we're going to go on to the Q&A session. Please feel free to post questions to Shana, to Claire. Also with the minister has had to leave for another commitment, but we have Tony Highland, who is a senior manager from the DWP, who'd be able to also ask about how you can get involved from that side. If we're not able to answer your question today, we will get back to you personally. So let's start with the questions. So our first question is, we have quite a few questions asking about about male victims of domestic abuse and other groups. We'd like to say that EDAC does recognise that there are other marginalised groups and men that are affected by abuse. However, EDAC does support women is primarily supporting women, given that they are disproportionately affected, as the Minister said earlier on. However, we do work with various partners, networks and organisations that we can pinpoint to if support for those groups are needed. So hopefully that's answered your question. Happy to build on that, or we can get back to you personally. Question for the Tony, are you there?
I am. I'm not sure I get my video on, but can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. So we have a question. Let me see which ones we can ask. So we have quite a few DWP colleagues asking how they can get involved, or they haven't had, a moment to. Could you just speak about personally how, call to the various colleagues we have within the DWP as to how they can get involved, and also what you've been doing in your day-to-day role to help out?
Of course, yeah, absolutely. And I must thank all of my, DWP colleagues for getting involved here. I must thank the Minister for getting on very short notice as well. In terms of our involvement, clearly, I think it's about sharing the word with employers and partners, getting them to engage in the process, getting them to actually register for the EDAC and obviously offer their support. I think my screen may be freezing, but I'll carry on anyway. And in terms of our domestic abuse advisors in local job centres, I think it's really about sharing the message that we have got on offer. The EDAC will support customers that do need that help and support. One of the reasons for the development of the EDAC is more around women that are maybe disempowered, economically disempowered, maybe not in an employment space, that maybe need that help and support, that are coming into our offices that are looking for that type of help and support. And EDAC will have a whole range of offers and holistic range of offers. So I think, from my perspective, absolutely sort of building on the work we've done with care leave, armed forces and care leavers, more than proud, the team, a fantastic team, how great it is to engage. We had a great pilot in London and Essex. I think it's really just let's put the word out there that this is a great sort of a program of support. We'd love some more employers and partners to get involved. They can offer support in any way on this as well. I'll just pick up the point about men, because there's work in progress looking at a similar type of covenant approach for men. Any organisation will obviously offer support to men if they need that help and support, and there's quite a number of organisations out there, but that's very much work in progress for us as well. As also, I'm talking to an organisation about violence against parents at home, which is another, that there's different types here, and I think we've got Home Office and BASE colleagues on the call here, and we are sort of working jointly and looking at how we sort of develop these things in a coherent way. But yeah, absolutely, really pleased that you've been able to join the call, and that's the message for me. Let's share the information with our stakeholders, get them involved, and share them with our work coaches and obviously any of our advisors that are dealing with customers, and this might be an issue for them.
Thank you, Tony. So, and again, DWP have been incredible. Tony's been there since before even day one, and has been, instrumental in having a successful pilot and being able to roll out nationally. We have a question about whether there are resources to target SMEs. So, provided you're a registered company in England and Wales and subject to due diligence checks, we welcome support from all businesses, regardless of size. So we're not just looking for large, corporations. But Claire, NG is quite a large organisation, so coordinating and rolling out EDAC perhaps may be a different experience for a small one. Could you talk about how NG has kind of gotten the message through EDAC and coordinated that within the organisation?
Yeah, I mean, you'd think because we're such a large organisation, that does again give us challenges getting the message out there. I mean, there's over 14,000 people employed in the UK. The area I cover probably about 500 people. So it's like any other covenant. I mean, the Armed Forces Covenant, the Care Leavers Covenant, which we've done some fantastic work with. It's all baby steps and things don't happen overnight. So again, I wouldn't let that put you off being an SME, thinking you're up against the big corporates, because again, we've still got, it's equally as challenging getting that message out. But as you know, EDAC are there to support you any other way. I mean, I have probably 3 or 4 conversations I used to do with Polly probably every week. Do you think this will work? What about this one? And, you know, you and your team are always there for support.
Yeah. And so, you know, we do welcome any sizes of organisations, not just corporates. We also work with third sector organisations, and our incredible partnerships team do really, you know, have regular involvement with our companies. So you don't have to come to EDAC with a full plan ready. We are there to cooperate and work together to see what works best for your company. So another question that we have is, have any banks signed up to the covenant as economic abuse can affect someone's credit score and reduce chances of startup loans? So as one of our partnerships team, Simon, has commented in the chat, we are very keen to engage with banks, and we are currently speaking with a wide range of organisations. Talking about, for example, economic abuse, we do work, one of our partners is Debt Free London, who are a member of EDAC, and they've rolled out a new domestic abuse debt helpline that we'll share in the chat shortly. So please share that with anyone that you may know, and survivors can use that helpline to ask about things such as credit scores and startup loans. And also they have just launched recently some financial webinars. So please, you know, share that around, and that could be really useful. We have another question. So this one's for you, Shana. Someone's asked, have you found that colleagues are responsive and supportive to hearing about domestic abuse and cause? And what's the general response that you've seen when you tell them about, you know, what you've been through, but also how eager and keen are they to get involved from your personal experiences?
I think I'm very lucky because in our local authority, we've got an amazing chief executive, and she's always worked around the domestic abuse campaigns before joining St. Helens. And she is so supportive of domestic abuse. And because we openly campaign about domestic abuse, the stigma within our local authority slowly, the domestic abuse stigma in general is breaking. I think because my story, I'm very open about my story. I think my biggest barrier moving forward was the shame around domestic abuse. And once I thought, actually, I don't care, know my story, I'm not going to let that be a shackle to my future anymore. I think with that courage, now I haven't had all of my colleagues support me with the whole domestic abuse campaign, delivering training, and we're working on a workplace scheme currently. So they are very supportive. I think we create individually, there's a huge psychological barrier because it's very shameful, because we think we're stupid or we're weak. How could you let that happen to you? And we're living in a victim blaming sort of society. But my colleagues, especially if at the top, if there's buying at the top, which there is for my workplace with my chief executive, who's absolutely fantastic, I think that's why I suppose in a sense I was protected from any sort of negativity from any colleagues. But since my story has come out, especially for organizations who think we don't have a domestic abuse issue in our organization, I'm telling you, you have. Every organization will have domestic abuse. It's about, have you created psychological safety for your colleagues, for your staff members to come forward? They could be suffering, you know, in silence at home because it's not very, I don't know, when you're thinking about your career, it's not very attractive to say that, yeah, I'm experiencing domestic abuse, but I want a promotion. So again, please create psychological safety within your workplace. Have a domestic abuse policy or a workplace scheme, and EDAC will support you with all of that. Thank you.
Yeah. And what would you say to survivors who are worried on the other side of the things that you mentioned, victim blaming, things like that? What would you say to them to take that jump and actually go for an opportunity, go for that mentoring scheme and take one of the opportunities that the employers are advertising?
Yeah, I can only speak from lived experience, and my biggest barrier was thinking that it's going to be used against me. But once, maybe I was lucky with my manager, my AD and my workplace, but once you put the cards in your table on the table and you say, this is me, this is what's happening, that is the biggest step, is disclosing the abuse. you will be amazed how much support is out there once you make that disclosure. And sometimes, yeah, it's a postcode lottery. It depends on what area you live in, but please go to your HR team, go to somebody you trust, and hopefully maybe I'm lucky with my manager, but I wish that for everybody, to have a supportive workplace, to have a supportive manager who will, you know, create that safety for you to disclose. And yeah, I hope that helps.
Yeah. And EDAC is not just there to help you provide opportunities, but also work with companies who may not have an infrastructure to support employees that may have faced domestic abuse, or to, you know, hire new individuals within there. That is part of one of the pledges and support. We work with you to build policies. Startling statistic that I think only about 5% of companies have a domestic abuse policy, so there's still far to go. And some of our partners offer trainings and webinars to help your employees and your companies be able to be more supportive of domestic abuse survivors. So that, you know, it's not all about being the perfect employer and having it all figured out. So, and another question we have is, does EDAC support just England, or is it the rest of the UK? Right now, we have just rolled out across England, but, you know, as we continue to grow, we're only 6 months old, so we're trying to grow slowly, and, you know, we appreciate any contacts or anything that you may have, and we'll definitely keep that noted. So thank you all to our incredible guest speakers for joining us today. If you have any other questions after, please email us at info@edacuk.org. Thank you to all of our members, our signatory partners, government ministers, government departments, and the Domestic Abuse Commissioner for their continued support. And a massive thank you to the EDAC partnerships team, who have been behind this event and been incredibly supportive. If you've enjoyed today's event as part of our national rollout, we'll be hosting similar events monthly as part of a series entitled EDAC Talks. We will invite various guest speakers from within the VORG sector, through which we will continue to raise awareness around domestic abuse and encourage meaningful conversations. If you are interested in getting involved in EDAC, we encourage your organisation to sign up today to become an EDAC member. As we've mentioned, we recognise every employer can provide different things and has a different capacity to offer support. So we do welcome the opportunity to discuss what you can provide. Visit edacuk.org to sign up. And as mentioned before, if you'd like to know more, please feel free to email us and a staff member will get back to you. And if you or someone you know could benefit from the support EDAC provides, please get in touch at support@edacuk.org. We all need to play our part in tackling domestic abuse, and we look forward to embarking on this important journey with you. Thank you for coming, and have a great rest of the day.